Hello, hello, hello. This is Soha Al-Baqlawi, Chapter Director of Startup Grind New Cairo Chapter. وأنا معايا هنا Miss Engy Abd El Wahab, founder of UNICA Marketing Research. We'll be talking today about marketing essentials for startups, tackling overall guidelines, worst case scenarios, updated resources, etc. etc. خلينا نبدأ right away with Miss Ingy's intro. Please introduce yourself and introduce UNICA Marketing Research.
Thank you, Soha, for the introduction and for the opportunity for having me today. I have 7 years of experience in the field of market research and consulting. I worked basically with different types of segments, starting from startups, multinationals, governments, large corporates, international organizations, and also in different markets like the Egyptian market, Middle Eastern markets, Western European markets, and American markets. And the story behind UNICA started when I used to work before in the field of market research in the big research companies, where we used to meet a lot of startups and SMEs approaching. They were the ones approaching. And although they were the ones approaching, which means that they have the need, they whenever they saw the proposal of the research from the companies I used to work at, they got fascinated technically, shocked financially. So so we
I
understood
do
that
agree on, I do
we
agree on shocked financially because people don't understand that marketing research is a heavy task to implement, and it's very dynamic yet very crucial. So I do understand that. So sorry to interrupt, but please continue.
yeah. So actually we decided to develop a different business model that would make us provide research with a budget that suits the affordability of startups and SMEs. And when we started to work with them, we found other problems as well, like lack of awareness about market research and a lot of misperceptions taking place. For example, they believed research to be basically desk research or just like understanding who my competitors are from what's available online, and that's it. Nothing about the customer mindset. There's like research is not one type, there are a lot of types. So we developed other services as well. We developed market research training to educate the different startups and SMEs what's meant by research, the different types, how to conduct each, when each is needed, and everything supported by real life case studies. Then we faced another segment of startups and SMEs who said, okay, even the affordable research is still not affordable for me. I want to do research on my own, but I don't have the technical know how. So we developed a third service that is one-to-one market research consultation, where the startup is the one who does the research by himself, but with our technical guidance, where we provide feedback on each and every stage to make sure that technically speaking, he's doing the research correct. So that's basically the idea of Unica, and
Unica,
so I am.
okay, so let me wrap it up. Basically, Unica works on three models or three services. One, the regular marketing research that is conducted for startups, but with a very, very convenient pricing, keeping in mind that there are on tight budgets. In case that this is a high number for startups or some startups cannot afford it, there is a second option where you educate or you technically guide or consult the founder or whoever is conducting the marketing research, which is done through one-on-one sessions, and they come back to you with certain milestones or checkpoints that you overview and just confirm that this is done right and this is done wrong. And third is the overall marketing research training. Am I correct on that?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. So we'll be sharing your website, inshallah, at the end in the chat, and we'll be highlighting what will Unica provide for Startup Grind New Cairo chapter as a community partner. But let's start right away with a brief on marketing research in general. And as you were saying, that people have misconcepts. People only thought that marketing research is relevant to competitors, not to the customer, etc., etc. So can you just highlight the main umbrella of marketing research and what are the generalized concepts, and then we'll start digging deeper from there.
Yeah, sure. So basically, market research is about understanding everything I need to know about my market, whether this is about the competition, about the customer, about the industry itself, about the context that I'm going to work in, whether the political fluctuations in the country, the legal fluctuations, the economic fluctuations, the social culture of the people, and the technological fluctuations that are happening in the market that I'm gonna work in. So basically, you collect data about all of these, so you understand who are your competitors, what they're doing, what is their pricing, what are their strategies, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and you understand the customer mindset, how they think, how they decide whether to buy from this X versus this Y, what are their consideration factors, how they evaluate people they have tried or brands or competitors they have tried before, and what is the unmet gap or the market need that's still not fulfilled. So we take from the unfulfilled needs and what competitors offer as unique selling point that will make me as a startup sustain in the market. Because otherwise, if I'm just replicating what's there, nobody would be interested to shift from who they are dealing with and come to me. And basically, the industry itself, whether the industry itself is growing or declining, what are the market trends that are existing, so that I'm sure that I'm going in the right track. There is enough big market opportunity that really makes sense for me to have business in this, and that this is not like a short-term plan that is expected to end for some global agreements or something. For example, if we're gonna take a look at the green trends, for example, and I want to do business in coal, then definitely my business is meant to end at some point. So it's very important that I'm aware of everything around me to make sure that I'm really choosing the correct market, the correct industry, the correct location, the correct segment, and all of that.
Uh, well, you did highlight a situation that happened with me. I was on a judging panel of university startups, and actually, there was this startup that was using car tires as road substitutes instead of asphalt. And they were completely unaware that car tires are already toxic. And when they are on the road or instead of asphalt, they are more exposed to sunlight, which they evaporate higher polymers, so they're more toxic to the economy or to the world in general. Secondly, is that the world is currently redirecting to a more eco-friendly type of tire. So they have within the 30 coming years, they're going to need to shut down, just like the example that you were saying. I just highlighted that because people are not aware of the overall direction. I mean, sometimes you're just so involved in your project that you don't see where the future is. And usually we build a business to last forever. We don't build a business to last for 10, 15, 20 years. But let me recap on the part or wrap up what you were saying, because I believe that some people might have get lost. So basically what you're saying is marketing research is the main umbrella where they study the overall dynamics of the industry that they're working on, the future or the trends that are relevant to it. They'll start after both of, or in conducting these two, they'll understand more about the competitor. They'll understand more about the customer or consumer that they're reaching, whether it's a customer or a consumer. They'll understand more about the governmental regulations, for example, the pricing, the technology, the implementation process overall. And last but not least, they'll be able to highlight a competitive edge, or what we call the product market fit.
Yes.
Okay, this is regarding entrepreneurship. I have to pause you here and ask you, for people who are doing things somewhat regular, or what we call the handcraft, for example, or accessories or catering, it's hard to highlight the competitive edge because it's usually the design, or it's usually, I don't know, the artistic factor of it or something like that. Would you, or how would you state, or how would you look on the part of the product market fit when it comes to accessories, or when it comes to something that is, is common, what we call red ocean, but then again, there's always room for new people to flourish in or grow in?
It's basically the same methodology of thinking because, as you just said, the design, the pricing, the offers, how you brand it, all of these could be things that create for you unique selling point. So it basically comes from how your customers make up their minds with respect to this category. So if we're gonna have, for example, the category of accessories or handicrafts products. Um, what would make people interested to buy your product and not my product, for example? So what are they looking for? They're looking to have unique designs that are not common in the market. So you need in your communication to stress about this more, to create a brand image for yourself and be able to penetrate the target segment you want to penetrate. Or maybe your target segment cares most about having offers and prices. So this is going to be how you communicate and how your business model should be focused on. Maybe you need to have a combination of this and that at some point, or in like diversifying the products that you offer, some to have premium thing with designs and high prices, and some to have things with offers and this. So basically what guides you in that is the competition and the customer mindset, how they make up their mind, how they evaluate the existing competition. And from here you decide to take, okay, my business model is going to focus on premium style, is going to focus on the pharaonic style, for example, or that I'm having very good prices, or whatever, depending on the what your customers are looking for, and testing the concept that you believe is your unique selling point with them, to see what triggers them in your unique selling point, whether they really perceive it as unique selling point or not, and what are the main triggers and what are the main concerns, and you communicate that in drawing your brand image.
I totally believe that what you just said is basically the nutshell, or what we call the gem of any business. Uh, but let's dive deeper into how can startups conduct successful marketing research, or let me rephrase that in other words. Is there a certain, like, roadmap for any startup to follow, keeping in mind that they're probably, or most founders or entrepreneurs come from a non-business background, not just non-marketing research, but in business in general. I mean, especially the artistic part, they are artistic. Usually they are more technical. They are more about the production itself and how to conduct the product rather than the business side of a startup. So can you guide us, or can you list for us a roadmap or something that they can just work by or work along with to have a successful marketing research?
Yeah. Well, basically, the first and the most important step is to define their business problem. Why do they want to do research in real business life? Market research, especially for startups and SMEs, need to be as actionable and practical as possible. And we're not discussing academia here. So the first thing they need to decide, and that's the first and most important step, is why they want to do market research. What is their business problem that they're facing? Is it that they want to enter a new market and they want to understand it to see their best market entrance strategy? Or is it that they already exist, but they are having certain problems and they're not reaching the clients that they thought they would reach, or they're not making the revenues that they thought they would make, and they don't know why? So they need to to see what they're doing versus what the market is doing, to see the gap and have a corrective strategy. Is it because they already have business and they want to innovate it a little bit, so add new features or add new product or add something, and they want to test the demand for these features and these new products, and whether they're going to create more share for them, or they're going to draw them backwards instead of forward? Or they are in the very early stage that they want to really make sure that their idea really has a market need, and that their customers perceive it as a solution for their problem need, and not just that this is the assumption of the founder. Because this is a very, very common problem in the startups world, that they come and present their problem, that the market has problem X, my startup offers solution Y for this X, but there's no validation that really this is how people perceive it. So this is one thing.
So
Or
basically,
whether I am in the market. Yeah,
what you're saying is the first step of all is to highlight why am I conducting this research? What is needed? So we
exactly.
have four phases.
Yes.
The first phase is the idea validation, which is the way before launching. It's when the business is still cooking in your head, and before you come out with a business identity and branding and this and that. So this is the market validation. It's called marketing research for market validation or idea validation. Secondly, is through the launching phase, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, or directly, we call it the pilot launch phase, where we have validated the idea itself, but now we're taking it on ground, or in other words, we're testing the waters to confirm that what we validated is exactly what we're putting out. Am I correct on that? Um,
That could be something too, like you mean the transfer from concept to product. That's what you're
yeah,
saying, right? Yeah, that's
yeah,
one thing too. Yes, that's one thing too.
yeah.
Mhm.
But does that differentiate from the launching phase that we're talking about?
Depends. Yeah, like the market. You mean the understanding the market yet, or
Yeah,
yeah, this
yeah.
could be something as well. But it depends whether I have a unique idea or I have something that I'm going to compete with. Like for example, some startups have something that they don't have competition in. So it's mainly about validation of the concept, then validation of the product. Some startups have ideas that they have competitors for. Definitely, they have their unique selling point in it, but they still have competition. So, in this case, they need to understand the market to see also how customers evaluate the existing competition, so that to validate that his unique selling point is really unique compared to the competition and the customer. So,
Okay.
you have the
So
two cases in this.
okay. So this is the explanation regarding the launching part. Third part is overcoming a certain problem. That's when you launched a business and you're not sure why isn't it moving, or why isn't it growing as much as you envisioned or as the forecast, or this and that. It can be a communication problem. It can be a customer satisfaction problem. It can be a product problem, etc.,
Exactly.
etc. And the
Exactly.
fourth type of innovation is or the fourth type of marketing research is to step in the innovation part. So this comes mostly, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, in the growth phase of any business. It's like, okay, we launched, we have proven that we're successful, and now we want to take this business to a higher level where we're adding innovation to the product itself. It can be overall innovation to the industry itself. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, but it's not necessarily just in growth phase. Sometimes startups even launch in phases. So, for example, they say that I'm gonna launch with I have a tech thing, for example, app or website or whatever. So I'm gonna launch with this phase now with these features. Then I'll see the market and like act with these features for 1 year or 2 years. Then I'm going to introduce new features to my application or to my marketplace, and like to grow my market share or my customers base. So he's not really in the maturity level yet, but he is launching in phases. So in these new phases he wants to make sure that those new ideas are really going to add, and that they are going to be perceived by his customers well, and or he needs to change anything about them. So it could be
So
that.
basically, he's validating each phase, or he's doing that to validate that each phase is a build-up that is going in the right direction. Am I
Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
Amna?
So it could be that, and it could be also what you described, that he is already at the maturity stage and he wants to innovate for further growth, and he has like been for the market for a while. So this is also another case. And there is also another case, adding to your point, that he wants to expand in a new market. So he already exists, but he wants to scale up geographically speaking or target segment wise. So, for example, I am B2B and I want to go B2C as well, or vice versa. I'm working in Egypt and I want to go to the Gulf, or I want to go to Europe, or I want to go to Africa, or vice versa. I'm working in Cairo and I want to go to Delta or Upper Egypt. So those for these, they are new markets with new people, new, that they have new mindset, that they are not like what he used to work with new competition. So he needs to act with those new segments, whether new customer segment or new geographical segment, uh, with to understand the market further, their decision making criteria and the competition and all of that. So that's also one thing.
Okay, so now that we categorized the types of marketing research, can I have an overall roadmap that can help people work with it, or can help co-founders and entrepreneurs work by?
You mean roadmap for the research
Yeah, how to
process?
conduct, yeah, for the how to
Yeah,
conduct a
that's
marketing.
so that's firstly that this is what we just explained is the first step to see
Okay,
where I am from these. The
okay,
second step would be developing a research plan, which is translating these into research objectives. So, for example, if my business objective is that I'm entering a new market and I need to ensure that I have the best market entrance strategy or the best product market fit. So that's my business objective. Then what would be my research objectives? What do I need to learn from research to feed in my business problem? So the research objectives in this case, what would be competition analysis, customer analysis for or customer mindset analysis, a market analysis for the industry dynamics, context analysis for the regulations, and this if this is a country that I'm not sure or I don't know about its situation. So I translated that into research objectives. Then we come to the third phase, which is starting the data collection. Okay, now I have the research objectives, so I need to collect data to answer these or to come up with these objectives. And from here, the market or the data availability decides which methodology and I'm going to take, and also where I'm standing will decide which methodology I'm gonna take. So, for example, I'm in a situation that I'm in the market, I'm not doing well, and I don't know why. So basically, I need to understand why. So when we say understand, that means we need to go qualitative. Why? Because qualitative allows you to talk and discuss and have this understanding part. So I'm gonna deal with interviews or focus groups as the methodology for data collection. If my objective that I want to see the market size and see how big it is to see whether it's worth it to enter this or not, well, my objective is numerical. So I need to adopt the surveys or quantitative methodology. If there is like, for example, one of the research objectives is to make competition analysis, and there is I'm in a market nature that everything I need to know about the competitors is on their websites. For example, I'm a training platform, so I can easily get into the other training platforms and see who are the trainers, who are the customers, what are the prices, and all of that. So desk research would be the methodology. If I'm in a service industry, so prices are, for example, not there, and I want to know what my competitors offer as prices. So I need to adopt mystery visit, like act as a client and ask for a quotation from the competitor to see his prices. I want to understand more about something strategic, how my future plans of my competition and all of that. I need to interview them. So the methodology and the data availability and where I am now, am I in the phase of measuring and quantifying, or I am in the phase of understanding? This will decide the methodology I'm going to adopt. And then we come to the last step, which is the analysis of all of that. And here I need to analyze the findings or the information I collected and segment them by the different segments. And what I mean by segmentation, and this is very important, that to make sure that my product, my strategy is really product market fit, is to segment this as per the different segments I'm targeting. So, for example, I am targeting B2C customers. So, I have females, I have males, I have youth, I have people with above or age groups, like, for example, from 24 to 34 or 35 plus or 60 plus, and so on. Who am I targeting from all of these? So, I need to identify my target audience. So, do I want people, all age groups, two genders, or one age group? Which social class I'm interested in? Am I interested in the AB social class and the C1 and the C2? What is the geographic location I'm interested in? And what is the psychological attitude I'm interested in? So for example, if I have a product in healthy and organic market, then I want people who are healthy eaters. So that would be the psychological attitude I would be looking for, not just everybody in the AB social class. And from here, when I analyze, I start to segment the different things that I identified as target audience. So I see the differences in insights across the gender, across the age groups, across the different locations, depending, of course, on who I want to target. But that's a very important thing to decide as well. And from that, we can reach the business decisions that we highlighted in the very first step. What would be the main five keys? Who are the most people or target audience that have the most opportunity for me? What is the best features that I should launch with for either my product or my service? So that's the second P. What is the best price? What is the best place to launch in? And what is, and even the format, whether I should be marketplace or I should partner with applications or I should be present physically, and where I should be. And the last would be the promotion, which is basically what do I need to stress on in my marketing message when I communicate with people and launch, and where I should be as marketing channel. So that's all.
Yeah, and as much as you try to make it sound simple, I'm sure it's. And I just want to ask you a question that we have been asked before. How many, if I'm conducting qualitative research when it comes to getting feedback or checking what the problem is, what is the number that I can say, you know what, this is the right amount, I'm not taking a biased results? Because I've been, I mean, through one of my other hats, I've seen a startup that conducted only 3 interviews, and she was like, yeah, they told me almost the same thing. And I'm like, this is, 3 is too little to have a valid concept or to gain an accurate data regarding something. So if I ask you, is there a specific number, what would you say? Especially
Okay.
quality.
Okay. So qualitative is basically not about the number as much as about the quality of the interview. That's why it's called qualitative. So qualitative, so I need to make sure that the person who is conducting the interview really has the know-how of probing and digging deep in the discussions. So it should not be any person. Unlike surveys, anybody can do it because they are straightforward questions. So you don't have to be a very skillful person to do it. When I mean the conduction, the analysis is something else, but the conduction. So surveys need quantity. That's why it's called quantitative. But qualitative, like interviews and focus groups, are focused more on the probing and the asking technique. So for interviews, I need to have per segment from 2 to 5 interviews, depending on the startup's budget. So the segment here is the thing So it depends on how many segments I have. So, for example, if I'm going to talk about B2C, the one segment means same age group, same gender, same social class. Um, if I'm going to talk about B2B, so it's same industry, same size of business, startups versus small and medium versus large versus multinational. So I need to make sure that I'm targeting and the location, of course. So per segment, from what I said, 2 to 5 interviews. So if I'm targeting 4 segments, then I need to make sure that I have 2 to 5 times 4. If I'm going to talk about focus groups, I need to have one focus group per segment, and the focus group has around. It depends. I'm going to do it online or face to face. If it's online, it's going to be around 4 to 5 participants. If it's face to face, it's going to be around from 6 to 8 participants. Unlike surveys, surveys depend on the quantity. So the market size will define what should be my sample size. So if I'm gonna speak about very big sample size, then per segment, I need to have from 30 to 100. The more, the better accuracy level, again, depending on my budget. And if I have small market size, for example, if I have 45 banks, then it doesn't make sense to take 100 banks because actually the market size is small. So in this case, we take from third to half the market size, again, depending on my budget.
Okay, thank you for that. I think this pointed out a lot of things, especially that the one I was telling you about. She did three on the business overall, not the segments. But then again, it's a learning process for all of us, and entrepreneurship is about learning. Okay,
Yeah.
so this being said, are there certain tools or resources that can help the startup or the entrepreneur to use to get easier access, more guidance, etc., etc.?
Um, yeah, there are actually maybe two things I can share. One thing is the macro level data. If I'm gonna explore something macro, for example, um, the economic and legal and political and sociocultural and market trends and the industry analysis part. So that's basically I'm exploring the macro situation of the country or of the market. So for that, desk research will do the job. So entities like CapMass, for example, like ITC Trade Map, if my thing is related to trade, um, World Bank, UN websites, all of these, the second are secondary data that can guide on the macro level. But if I need to have micro things like I have very specific segment, for example, organic food. So it's not just food. So organic food might not, the data might not be available. So I need to collect it using, as we said, interviews and surveys, and depending on the situation and the objective. So in this case, we need to have, if I'm going to talk about surveys, the good thing we get for startups to start with is SurveyMonkey Pro. SurveyMonkey Pro is not expensive, and it gives you the basic needed things to analyze your insights well. Like, for example, they gives you cross tabulation, logic skipping, so it allows you to have your survey logically, and also allows you, when you analyze, to segment your answers across the different segments. The basic Survey Monkey doesn't have these things, so it's paid, but it's very cheap compared to other softwares that are more expensive. So maybe those two things can be as a starting point, things that startups can access and they're cheap.
Okay, thank you for that. The second question would be, so we've highlighted the map, we've highlighted the categorization, and we have highlighted the tools and resources. Where do startups or founders go wrong, or what are the common mistakes that happen usually from a startup or an entrepreneur?
Hmm. That's a lot.
You can highlight a
Okay.
top two or three at most.
Okay. The first problem is that we talked about it a little bit earlier, is the wrong assumption. I've seen this hundreds of times, that I receive a startup and he is so sure about everything, so sure about his target audience, so sure about his business model that it really answers a real problem thing and everything. And when we start the research, we find all the assumptions wrong. So it's very important that you really validate whatever assumptions you have, even if you have been in the market as an employee for a long time. Because being an employee doesn't mean that you know everything about your customers. That's not the same thing. I received, for example, one case. There was a startup in the sector of real estate and hospitality. It was composed of four founders, and they were not young people. They had, I think, from 30 to 40 years of experience in this field, but they used to work in big companies like Orascom and this. So Orascom is a big company, and it has everything inside it. So it's not when like the market outside. That was the gap. So sometimes when people work in multinationals, they really learn a lot technically, but about the market and what's there and the customer, it doesn't mean that they know it. So that was their case. So their business idea was about that they had had some service in different angle. So their unique selling point from their point of view was the combination of these services in one place. They believed that this is their edge. And they also had assumptions about who the target audience would be. So they believed that they targeted 3 and 4 star hotels because those guys don't really have any people inside doing this kind of job. So they would need them, unlike 5 stars plus. And they also believed in geographically speaking about some areas that this is where the opportunity is. When we did the research, we found that all of these are wrong. Number one, the combination of services was not the catchy thing. People didn't really care. The other thing, the geographic locations, they thought that Red Sea, Dahab, and this, because they're primitive, they have a lot of opportunity. But actually, the edge there is that those places are primitive. So they don't want to change and use their services for building luxurious things and that. Unlike the North Coast, for example, where there were a lot of opportunities in the North Coast, they didn't even think about it. It came from the research. Um, New Cairo, like New Capital or and Zaid and this, they had a lot of opportunities. Also, it wasn't on their map. And with the target audience, also that was really wrong. That we found that the owners of 5 stars plus hotels are also the owners of 3 and 4. They just have different stars, so they don't really need them even in the 3 and 4. So, we found that the real estate developers would be the ones with opportunity, for example. So that's what I mean.
So
Like,
it basically
do not
shifted
guys.
everything. It basically shifted the
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
business, demographic, the
Yeah.
audience, the location. So, okay, this is, I don't want to depress other entrepreneurs, but this is the importance of validating the idea before launching, not waiting to launch. And as Inji was saying, it doesn't matter where you are or how long you have been in the industry, because whether you're an employee or working in a corporate or this and that, it's not, you don't have, or where you're sitting never has the overall view of the industry and the customer or consumer that you're looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are common mistakes. I don't want to depress them anymore. Can I ask for what are worst case scenarios that happen and how to avoid in general when it comes to marketing
Um,
research?
yeah, I would say that it is related to the same thing mainly. Like, worst case scenarios is sometimes I receive startups operating already and they learned it the hard way. Like, they've been into a lot of uh, failures and financial losses in this because of that. And then they started to understand, okay, there's a problem. We need to have research to fix what we're going by and what we're passing by to really have corrective strategy for that. So I would say the worst case scenario would be mainly like proceeding with that and learning it the hard way. Um, I would say also some, no, this is not really a worst case as much as it's a problem. Sometimes startups really enter the entrepreneurship thing for seeking investment and not really for having an idea that they believe in or that has a market opportunity and that. And when it comes to this area, we find a lot of problems and things that you've
Yeah.
been judging in some things, so I'm sure you saw a lot in that. So um, for example, we have very overestimated market size. Like we take the very macro thing. For example, I have business model that's going to serve organic bakery products, and I present my market size as people, how much people spend on food in general. Definitely, that's not comparable. And they think people would buy it and investors would be fooled with that. And they don't, they're not, they get it. So that's also, you need to really understand what you're offering and how you seek it, and really do the job of um, doing the research and really validating what you're passing by, and before approaching investors or before proceeding with work, because that's the way for sustainability. Otherwise, you would go 1 year, 2 years, and you're out. So that's very important that you have all of these market validation things before even thinking about investment, because we have seen like Oak, for example. Oak was a big e-commerce platform, and they just, now they're not there in the market. They received very high level of investment. So it's very important that investment is not the key to sustainability. It's important, but you need to have this market validation thing first, and then you think about growing that. But you have to have some material that really has an opportunity.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is, any worst case scenarios is do not fail hard, which means do the work before, not after, because you will face effort, time, and financial losses. And second thing is usually, and this is, I think everyone in entrepreneurship says it, never launch a business for money. It's not about the money, it's about what you're offering. And I guess third thing is that marketing research is crucial every step of the way. It's like validating from one phase to another and going or checking that we're doing in the right direction. So basically, I can call marketing research a type of compass or the grounding business compass for any business before starting and through the process and even in the maturity phase. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, any tips and tricks for startup founders in general?
Uh, well, maybe you need to test the water continuously with people around you. Do not make this only friends and family. Try to go to places where your target audience would be there and spreading. For example, if you're targeting AB social class, go to sports clubs that where they would be, malls where they would be. Try to have a certain incentive that will make them interested to talk to you and give you feedback about your product. Maybe small voucher, maybe giveaways if you are having a product, maybe small free service that, to create incentive so that people would have the urge to talk to you, give you feedback. So that will help you test the water. Do not make it just friends and family, because they would be biased and will tell you have great ideas. So it's important to validate that from other and surroundings, and create some creative ways to talk to people and make them interested. um, I would say that would be the main thing to do.
Okay, we have a question. What is the timeline needed to conduct to do the data collection part, and then for overall research? I mean, we highlighted that it comes in steps, and the most important part is the segmentation or the connection with the data collection or data segment. And as you're saying, it's not only about the numbers, it's about the quality or how professional or how good you are at digging deep and asking the questions that need to be answered. uh, but overall, what's the expected timeline for marketing research? Or when do I know if I hire someone for marketing research and they tell me it'll take 6 months and I want to launch in a month or so? I mean, how do I evaluate that? Okay, so let me ask two questions: the overall timeline for marketing research and data collection. And if I want to onboard a marketing research intern, volunteer, caliber with me, what are the criteria that I need to have an eye out on to check that they're good calibers or that they're on the right track?
Okay. For your first question, it depends on the research scope. So I will give you a range because, as I said, what defines that is the number of segments you are targeting and how reachable they are. So the more they are high level people, the more it takes time. So we can give an average between 3 weeks until 3 months, depending on how big your sample size and the segments you're targeting. Um, that's for the time. For the second thing, the criteria of if you're getting an intern or something. Well, if you're getting an intern who doesn't really have any background in the research, you need to be yourself someone who knows the research. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend getting an intern. I would recommend getting maybe a junior or someone who has some knowledge. Otherwise, you're going nowhere because neither you nor him. So who will learn? Who will do it? So someone, someone in the circle
Or
needs
you
to
have something
share.
called spaghetti research, which is like I have a spaghetti here and I have a spaghetti there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Okay.
need someone here in the picture who knows research and maybe he can guide the whole thing. So if you
And
don't
I
have any,
believe this is, and I believe this is a part where UNICA can serve in that. It's like
exactly.
if you guys don't know, we're here to help you, and we're here to just be the backside of telling you this is done this and this is done that. And I believe this is highly needed in the startup and entrepreneurial field overall.
Yeah, that's so true. And like if you inside the startup, like who do the job, like for example, if we act as consultant and he wants someone to do that we give feedback on. So this person would depend which part in the research he would be tackling. So for example, if he's tackling the data collection, he needs to be an extrovert person who knows how to talk to people, to probe and get the information. If he is in the analysis part, he needs to be with analytical mindset. He knows how to draw a pattern and segment and collect the similarities and versus differences. Um, so it depends on where you're going to put him. So it's very important that you don't put an introvert person in the data collection, for example, because otherwise, if you're doing qualitative data collection, it will bring very, very bad data. So it's very important that this person knows how to talk to people and everything. Then the analytical part, to have the analytical mindset. If you're analyzing qualitative data, then he needs to know how to create a pattern. If you are analyzing quantitative data, then he needs to have some statistical background. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so basically, can you? I mean, I'm very conscious of the time, and we only have 5 minutes left. Can you, in a nutshell, or in 1 to 2 minutes, just give a take-home strategy or toolkit that people can work or use a guidance as guidance, or even return to the recording to listen to it and work by it?
Um, as the first steps, guys, that you need to do as homework is firstly to define two main things: your objective from doing research, since you're here, so definitely you have some objective, and defining your target audience in terms of the if it's B2B, the industry, the size, if it's B2C in terms of the gender, the social class, the age group, and the location, of course, in both, and the psychological attitude that you are looking for, because those are going to be the two steps. Basically, you need to go and talk to yourself and write them down. Then you start to decide, okay, where am I now? Do I need to understand? Do I need to measure? Do I need to have both? Then you start creating the methodology. Okay, I'm going to go qual, I'm going to go quant, using the tricks that we just mentioned about the sample size. You can start with the minimum I mentioned to test the water. So, for example, two interviews or one focus group, and in each segment, 30 surveys in your segment, or depending on your market size, and you start like communicating in the places where your target segment would be gathered, to start creating the questions. Why I want to, what do I need to understand and learn from research to validate whatever I'm doing or to go to the next step. That would be the main things as homework, I would say.
I highly agree on that. And before I wrap up, I have two questions. First question is, can startups only work one methodology for research? Like, can they only depend on qualitative or quantitative, or usually has to be a mix? This is the first question.
Depends on the objective. So the objective defines everything. So maybe you are in the phase you will need to understand, and full stop. You don't need to go to this next phase, because you're having a certain problem, or you are in your very early stage. You don't really have a product or a concept yet. You need to understand. You need to understand more your target audience, and then you start developing what you're going to offer in detail more. So in your phase, you need to just go qualitative. In some other people who need to then have the next step to quantify some stuff, then they need to do both. And other things, they only have numerical objectives. So they are in the market, they want to do brand tracking, they already understand what their customers think, but they need to see, to track their performance versus how customers think and evaluate. So they need to track the KPIs that customers evaluate with, to see what they did versus last year, for example, to see if they are going on the right track or there are any problems. So they just need to measure here, or they're seeking market size, or they're seeking price. So they just need to measure here. So they need, in that case, to just go quantitatively. So the objective decides whether I need to go qual only, quant only, or both.
Okay, and finally, is the psychological part or testing, if an organization or startup is working on, it's a social enterprise, so it tackles a part or a huge part of the behavioral change and the mindset. I'm guessing after you answered this question here that such measurement would be done qualitatively, because it needs more of the understanding part rather than getting the numbers or saying that, you know what, we have had 10 people who've changed their mindset, but you'd rather have, okay, we have a change in mindset here that says we go to this direction, and a change in mindset here that says we go to that direction. Am I correct on that?
Usually, social enterprises, yeah, has to be their definitely first step. They might stop here, or they might then evaluate and quantify as a later stage. But for them, qualitative is, yes, yeah, a must, a must do, followed by quant as an option more. So yeah, qual is definitely a must. Quant would be depending on whether I want to go to the next step for quantifying things or not, but they cannot skip qual,
Okay, perfect.
because
And
you're seeking changing behavior.
because I'm seeking what? I'm sorry, I lost you here.
Changing behavior. So behavior, I need to understand the psychological drivers. So you need to really dig deep. So, for example, if you noticed the campaigns of UNICEF and these organizations, they target changing behavior. I was on the research of one of those campaigns, so it was all qualitative, because it was the campaign of changing violence, or like violence against the children, especially teenagers. So they need to see what would be the driver and the behavior of the parents that would make them feel guilty and change. So the idea of guilty, this is a very psychological thing. So you need to talk and dig deeper and deeper to see, okay, that's what makes you feel guilty. And this is should be the message of my campaign. That's not going to be got quantitatively.
Very interesting, and I guess the conversation can go on forever, but I'm very conscious of the time, and I believe we don't have any Q and A's. Abdul, do we have any Q and A's? I don't. I'm checking now. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time. And I believe that what you're saying and what you're doing is highly needed. And it's beneficial on so many levels. Finally, I'd like to wrap up with thanking you for that and sharing your website in the chat. And most importantly, I want to thank you, Engy, for the availability of giving all startup community, Startup Grind New Cairo chapter community, a 15-minute free consultancy call. Just let us know how can we share or what we'll be sharing regarding the consultancy call. I mean, will they just inform you that they attended? Do they need a promo code, this or that? And inshallah we'll include it in the video. And attendees, I just want to remind you that everything that is or has happened in this session is already recorded and will be on Startup Grind Global YouTube channel. We'll send out the wrap up for this session, and I guess I'm just waiting for you, Engy, to tell us how can they reach you, and if there's anything else we can do.
Yeah, sure. So I think basically they can just reach out by email and mention Startup Grind Cairo chapter in the subject, and that will do the job. If you have any other recommendations, I'm very open.
No, I guess this is good enough. After all, and I believe that some of them are going to come to you within a week or so from this event. And thank you so much again for joining us and for being with us here. And inshallah, I'm sharing now your website. Let me just share it before we wrap up. And I guess this is it for now. So thank you so much for your time and efforts. And once we have the video wrapped, we'll be sharing it with you. Feel free, please, to share it on all your networks. And we look forward to working with you on multiple levels and to not only under Startup Grind umbrella, but under any entrepreneurial and startup umbrella. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much for the
Sorry.
opportunity. Great.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon, inshallah. Bye.
Inshallah. Bye.